some of your great fights. I mean, I had seen him fight McCallum and I'd seen him fight a bunch of guys. I did not expect that. What was your approach going into the Callum?
Well, my approach going into the fight was just to be in, tip-top condition because Samu Connolly had beat all the American middleweights, so he just figured like I was just going to be another feather in the cap. So when we went to training camp to start preparing for him, we trained for like a 12-round shootout because he was a very classic fighter, great counterpuncher, and just dynamite fighter. And of course, we got out and knocked him out in one round. It sent a major message to all the middleweights in the division that I was on my way and I was coming, and this is what they had to expect. But me knocking him out like in 88 seconds of the first round was real historic. It was the third fastest knockout at that particular time back in '89 in the history of boxing. So it put me in a great class with marvelous Marvin Hagler, let him rest in peace, and one of those other great middleweights, I think like Henry Grubb or one of those guys. They had like the 1 and 2, and they put me on the third list as far as the middleweight championship fight ended in 88 seconds of the first round. It was historic, but I mean, I really wanted to beat the guy because, like I said, he had never lost to American middleweight, and he thought I was going to be another guy to put on his notch. And for me to go out and knock him out in royal fashion like that was like a very, exciting night for me and his history making, and made Michael Nunn well known all over the world, and people talk about that fight forever. And I noticed they do I think it's like either 100 greatest knockouts or the 50 greatest knockouts. And it makes me feel good to be watching the YouTube and see that, you know what I'm saying? So it was very honorable. And I know I beat a great fighter that night, too.
I think so there's not a lot of guys who still have fought 15 rounds. You've been in 15-round fights. Or the Tate fight was a 15 round.
Well, believe it or not, me and Tate, we fought the second to the last 15-round title fight in the history of boxing. Yeah. And I think a guy named Calvin Grove and Jorge Paez fought the last 15-round title fight, but I fought the second to the last 15-round fight in the modern-day history of boxing. So that was historic. I mean, I could have fought 30 rounds that night because, it was getting the opportunity to fight Frank Tate was historic because during the Olympic trials, I should have been boxing at 156, but the Olympic Committee so happened with the tutelage of Emanuel Stewart speaking, telling the people to tell Michael to go up and fight 165 because allegedly they wanted a stronger contingency, and I was just a street guy, and I just wanted to fight. I was going to be done boxing after the Olympics anyway. I was just doing it because it was something I could do. It kept me out of trouble, and it kept me out of the streets. And I want to give a lot of respect to a lot of the older guys back in Davenport, Iowa, Marshall Jackson, Gene Baker, Lawrence Douglas, and so many guys. I can name 1,000 names. A lot of them are here, and then a few of them have passed away. But I was going to be done boxing. And when I went all the way to the Olympic trials boxing finals at fighting 165, which I should have never been there, but I boxed all the way to the Olympic trials finals and lost to Virgil Hill. I should have been boxing 156, but no excuse. But thank Frank. I guess he got to thank Emanuel Stewart for getting me out of the 156-pound division and had me go up. But I wanted to beat Frank Tate due to the fact that I should have been fighting at 156 at the Olympics, but unfortunately I didn't. They asked me to move up, and I just moved up because I just wanted to fight. And then once I turned pro, we was both middleweights, and I had the golden opportunity to fight him. So I told him, I said, you went home with the gold medal in '84, so I got to go home with the IBF World Middleweight Championship tonight here, July 28, 1988, in Caesar's Palace. So that was a crowning achievement moment for me because I got a chance to get some revenge. Right. He went to the Olympics, and he took care of his business, and I'm proud of Frank. He's a dear friend of mine, but I got a chance to straighten things out. So it was a great night.
And that moment, just talk about that moment winning the title.
Well, you got to understand that that was the biggest fight of my career at that particular time. It was July 28, 1988 at Caesar's Palace, and I had the opportunity to fight for the championship. And I just never wanted to fight for the title. I wanted to win the title. I mean, fighting for it is great, but to be talked about, you got to win the world championship. So I knew what I had to do, and I went out there that night and took care of business and was able to become IBF World Middleweight Champion.
And just to back up one more time on the 15-round thing. What was your opinion at the time, and do you think it's safer for guys to fight?
Well, true enough, it's safer, especially if you got guys cutting a lot of weight and having to fight. Anything to make the sport safe. You know what I'm saying? I would never want to just go against nothing because they got commissions and stuff to make those determinations and things of that nature to determine on how many rounds it goes. So if it's going to say to fighters, hey, I'm all for it, but it made me feel good because as a kid growing up, I used to watch the legendary Muhammad Ali. Sometimes he would go 15 rounds, sometimes he would stop the fighting. But as he got older, he's always in condition. And so I learned from Ali, and, I always wanted to go 15 rounds, just say I win it, you know what I'm saying? So, I would always train I could go 30 rounds. I mean, even though at the time it was scheduled for 15 rounds, but if you can get it over with before 15 rounds, it's great. But if not, you got to be just in super condition to be able to endure. And I don't care how many rounds I had to go that night, July 28th, 1988, in Caesar's Palace to the strong Frank Tate. I was going to do everything in my power to become middleweight champion. Whether I was going to go 5 rounds, 10 rounds, 15 rounds, 20 rounds, I didn't care what it was. That was my motivation to like become champion. And when I stopped in the 9th round, it was good. But
I'm asking about another fight. So I remember, I think you guys were on Arsenio Hall, the Barkley fight.
oh wow, yeah, yes
I
sir,
remember that
yeah.
appearance, and Arsenio was talking about, oh, he's from the Bronx.
Right, and then I'm from Iowa, and he said when he thinks of tough guys, he don't think of guys living in Iowa. He thinks of the Bronx, in New York or something, and which is true. But I was that secret weapon to come out of Iowa, and the world got a chance to see what I could do.
Yeah, and just talking about that Barkley fight, how important was
It
that?
was very important because Barkley was a very tough guy, and he fought a bunch of great fighters. He beat Tommy Hearns, and he felt like if he beat Tommy Hearns, why can't he beat Michael Nunn? But Iran was a super tough guy. I see him all the time. We always kid about a rematch, but Iran was a tough fighter. I mean, very relentless, very determined. He wanted to beat me because he lived on the East Coast, I lived on the West Coast, so it was one of those type of things. But the fights were won inside the ring, and that's where the fight was won at. But Iran Barkley, I learned a lot in that fight because the type of pressure that he puts on a fighter. I mean, nobody never put pressure on me like Iran Barkley. And then he had to be the strongest middleweight ever because he was so relentless and so strong. I remember up in Reno, Nevada, where I look across the ring, and we weighed in at 160, but it looked like when he come in the ring, it looked like he was 250 the way, he looked like a silverback gorilla. I'm like, wow, I got to go fight this guy. But, I was in such, great condition, and I had the skills, and I just went out there and utilized my skills and, fought a great fight when I ran over 12 rounds. It was 12 hard rounds of boxing. But, guys like Iran Barkley prepared me for the super tough, just relentless guys because the type of pressure he applies on you is unstoppable. I mean, because he's just a relentless guy. He knows only one way to fight. I mean, he brought out the best of Michael Nunn that night. So I was in, tip-top condition. I wasn't worried about it. I knew I could box 12 rounds, 24 rounds, whatever it was going to take for me to win the fight. I was going to win the fight. But Iran was one of my toughest, oppositions, one of my toughest opponents. I numbered admiration and respect for him.
And just the last question, Michael, you had a little bump in the road in there in your life.
Yeah, but my thing is, you go through life to grow through it. And I've always been a relentless type of guy. Anybody that knows me, they know one thing about me. I'm going to win at whatever I do, and whatever I chose to do, I was going to win. And even though I made some, bad mistakes, I had to go through life to grow through it. And like I said, hey, I done my time like a man. I come home like a man. And for me to be here now, just a few years ago, I was in a federal penitentiary, and I was doing a 24-year sentence, but unfortunately, I didn't have to do it all 24. I was blessed to be able to come home. They hit me with the 2-point reduction, and they kicked me out of prison, which was great. They bring me to prison then, with my good behavior and things of that nature, I was able to get released like 5 years before I was supposed to get released. So I want to thank the federal system for passing that law to be able to let me get home because I wasn't supposed to be home to December 19th, 2024. And I already been home 4 years, and I've been around the world and back since then. So, I mean, it was just something I learned a valuable lesson. And like I said, I done my time like a man. I came home like a man, and thank God I'm able to overcome everything I overcome and still be able to, make a name for myself and be able to continue to live my life and be recognized by people, not just in this country, but, worldwide.